Welcome to How to Share, a podcast about sharing to the appropriate audience in the best way at the right time. I'm Wynne Leon, and in this episode, I'm with tech exec Doug Hauger, and we're talking about leadership. Doug and I have known each other for 30 years, first as colleagues and later as mountain climbing friends. He has an incredible ability to provide direction in both a clear and humble manner. It's what made him so successful as an executive at Microsoft and also in his personal summits. In our conversation, I ask him what's given him the confidence to lead. We talk about taking in all the information and viewpoints from team members and setting direction. Doug shares his insights about being open while also maintaining boundaries. He tells us how he maintains space for being wrong. We discuss how sharing vulnerably intersects with uncertainty and whether or not sharing changes when there is someone with less noble instincts on the team. In this rich episode that sparkles with so many insights about leadership and sharing direction, Doug shows us what sharing, vulnerability, humility, and leadership look like, and how that powerful combination empowers others. We also tell a few mountain climbing stories. This is a great episode that delves into the heart of sharing power and the power of sharing. I know you'll love it. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Wynne.
It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
We have been friends for 30 years, I think. Colleagues first, friends. We've climbed mountains together a couple times. On Mount Adams, Mount Rainier. We even did
Mount
an
Baker.
expedition. Yes, yeah, it wasn't my best moment. We went to Mount Everest in Russia. And one of the things I'm always astounded by is your ability to be a wayfinder, to provide direction. Like, I remember the last time we did Mount Adams with your delightful and amazing daughter. You were describing the route, and you're like, we come up out of the trees, and then we hit the ridge line and take a right and follow that to the lunchbox, and I'll kind of nod, but really, I just follow your footsteps. But it takes a lot to share direction. And so I'm glad that you could come on and talk about this because you're good with a map. You have a lot of experience. It takes confidence. How does it feel to you when you're put in that role of leadership?
Great question. How does it feel? It feels good to be right and get to the summit. But being put in that role, I'd say it can be a little scary at times. And you have to have confidence that you know what you're doing. And that's like in that particular instance, I felt like I knew where I was going. I read the map. I have a good sense of direction and of sort of topography, but also just being willing to realize that I may not be right, but I'm pretty certain this is the way we're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way, and especially when if you're mountain climbing, and it's the same in other areas of life, that if you're going to be taking leadership, you have to lead, but you also have, and you share your view, but you've got to do it in a way that allows for uncertainty, because you might not be right.
Well, that's one of the things that I've loved about, again, we've worked together for lots of years, and in the technology realm where things are changing so fast, and you've been a tech exec for many years. You were tech exec at Microsoft for 18 years.
Yep.
18 years. But one of the things that I always really impressed by is that you hold space for that uncertainty. And the phrase that I attribute to you that I've heard from you a lot is you'll say, I could be wrong. And you can say it sometimes. You say it with a smile. You're like, I'm 100% right, but I still could be wrong. And that's an interesting dichotomy. It's sort of a both and, right?
It is, yeah. And you said it's dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
And when I share that, when I say, "Hey, this is the way we're going. This is what I believe we should do," but I could be wrong. I do believe I'm right. I know what the right solution is, and I sincerely believe I could be wrong. And especially when you have a lot of people, as you said, companies like Microsoft and other very successful companies around the world, you have a bunch of people in the room who are incredibly smart.
Hmm.
You need to go into the room thinking that you're not the smartest person in the room and be willing to have the uncertainty in your own conviction that it can be influenced by other people. That's also really liberating. Sharing
Hmm.
something and being open to feedback that maybe that what you're sharing is, even though you think it's right, it may
Hmm.
not be right. That allows you to not always have to have the right answer. Other
Hmm.
people can contribute, and it's incredibly liberating, especially if you're a leader, a senior leader, and leading a team to some goal. You're not alone, and I think that that's the basis for that feeling of both the vulnerability, but also the assurance and the liberation is realizing that there are a lot of people on the team that are going to bring you along. And that to me is one of the key things about being able to share an environment. If you share and you have to be right all the time, you better be really sure
Right.
that what you're sharing is absolutely correct, or
Right.
else you better not share. And that's not a good environment for sharing.
Right. And what you just said there was so insightful. You picked apart the difference between leading and sharing, those two things, and being right.
Yeah,
Because what you just said, and I'll try to say this back, is if you're sharing and you have to be right, it's sort of an untenable position. Am I saying that right?
absolutely. That's
Hmm.
exactly it. And it's the
Hmm.
same. I like where you started with the mountain climbing analogy, right? Is that if you share that this is the route and you keep going and it's the wrong route, you better be open to feedback that what you've shared is not
Hmm.
correct. And it's the same in business. And it's the same. If you're going to be a successful leader, you have to be willing. If you look across successful leaders across
Hmm.
all the industries. The really good ones are the ones that set a direction. They say, this is the way that we're going.
Hmm.
I'm right. We're going to get there. And then they're open to redirection and
Hmm.
input and feedback.
Right.
And I guess that's one of the things that good leadership fosters is an environment of actually two-way or multi-way sharing. I will share as a leader, and that creates a bond. It creates a level of trust with people
Right.
on the team. With that trust, they then feel that they can share back. And
Hmm.
that's very important. You can't have a
Yeah.
one-way sharing street and be successful. It
Right.
has to be reciprocal.
Right. This brings me to one of my favorite Brene Brown quotes. In my most recent research on courage and leadership, the ability to embrace vulnerability emerged as the prerequisite for all of the daring leadership behaviors. If we can't handle uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure in a way that aligns with our values and furthers the organizational goals, we can't lead. I mean, and that's what you were
Well,
just saying, which
yeah.
is you're allowing for that two-way street then.
Yeah, and I think the some great things in that quote. The one of the key things is vulnerability. And if you are not willing to embrace vulnerability, it's difficult to share. It's difficult to share honestly and
Hmm.
in a transparent way. It's also very difficult to allow that two-way street because you have to be open and embrace vulnerability and be comfortable with it to allow people to then share back with you and maybe criticize or question.
Hmm.
When you share information, you share direction, you share leadership and goals. Um, you have to be open to people questioning that. Leaders who don't allow questioning are not usually successful long term over time. And so I think that that's key. And then the other one at the end, as you say, aligned to your personal values and the
Hmm.
goals of the organization. There's a leadership crucible in some ways where you get melted down into the very essence of what you are as a leader. And in that crucible, if you do not hang on to your values, you will fail. You have to, if you're strong in your values and you know why you're doing this, you have conviction about where are you as an individual? Where does your heart sit in
Mm-hmm.
leadership?
Right.
And is it aligned with the goals of the organization? Then sharing becomes actually a fairly easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, fairly easily within your values, being transparent and
Yeah.
being honest because you can have that, you're not trying to maintain a persona, I suppose is
Yeah, that's yes, you
yeah.
just nailed people who, yeah, if you're sharing with an artificial outside
Mm-hmm.
skin, some persona that you're trying to manifest, that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to prop up, it becomes pretty clear to people very quickly that you're disingenuous
Right.
and that you are not, yeah, that you're not being
Yeah.
honest. You're not being
Yeah.
transparent.
Right. And I think both you and I have worked with and maybe even climbed with some people that were disingenuous, maybe a little Machiavellian, that type of thing. Does sharing or not sharing make a difference when you have that type of person on your team?
If you have a if you have a truly bad actor on your team, I think not sharing is really bad. I
Mm,
think you run the risk of allowing them to create a reality in
mm,
which they can
right?
pursue their nefarious intent.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big risk. In addition, I think sharing is helpful, and I'll say in just a second how I think it's helpful. I will say before that, if you have someone that is truly Machiavellian, truly a narcissist, and truly sort of seeking their own success, it's hard often to get them off of that position,
Mm,
even if you share transparently. Now, that said, what I have seen when I've had situations like that occur is that in sharing honestly, transparently, and openly about yourself and your goals and your values
mhm,
and how they align to the organization, and also having the advantage of being in a position of leadership in the organization, that individual may look at that. And even if they are a narcissist and they're out for their own success, they may
mhm,
look at that and say, here's a leader who is being transparent and honest and is sharing with me, and they've been rewarded by the company. They are
mhm,
in a position of leadership. So I should mirror their behavior in order for me to get ahead.
mhm.
And it is in a way, self-serving for them to try to do that,
Right.
but it does allow for maybe some alignment of their goals with the goals of the company, which at
Mhm,
the end of the day, that's what you
right.
want everyone on the team, whether they're
Right.
sort of a bad actor or not, you want everyone aligned with the goals of the organization and you want to do
Mhm,
it in a way that leads to a successful, happy, productive team, which
right.
is aligned with the values that you would have as a leader is to have a team that's productive and help everyone be successful.
Right. And I love what you said there about not sharing, which it means you've been taken off of your game by trying to respond to somebody who isn't, who's playing their own
Mm,
game. I mean, it's sort of a tenuous dance that where you're, essentially leaving your nature behind and responding instead of, being authentic.
right.
Right.
The reason I'm smiling as you say that, I haven't thought about this for a while. And now I remember situations where I've been in where exactly that. I have been taken off my game as a leader.
Hmm.
And I actually have not shared and I've become more reticent to expose
Right.
myself because people on the team may have attacked me or undermined me or
Hmm.
tried to further their own goals.
Right.
Uh, which may not be in alignment with what I think we should be doing. And then I step back and I say, wait a second, what should I share? What should I not?
Yeah.
And it invariably leads to a position where I am no longer as successful as a leader as I could be.
Hmm.
And you have to step out of that. You have to work hard to step out
Right.
of that. And a lot of that, and I know we're talking about sharing sort of the dialogue between external individuals.
Hmm.
A lot of that stepping back into your role as leader is sharing with yourself, having those moments as a leader when you sit down and you reflect and you say to yourself, what are my values? Where
Hmm.
am I going? How
Right.
does that align to the organization? and share with yourself your previous experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's leaders have wisdom, and
Mm-hmm.
they should share that wisdom with people on the team. They need to reflect and share that wisdom with themselves at
Mm-hmm.
times in order to keep themselves moving forward and
Right.
growing as a leader.
Right. You need to know what mountain you're trying to climb, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be very confusing if you thought you were climbing Mount Rainier and you're actually climbing Mount Elbrus.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. There's a lot of great analogies we could pick there because I'm thinking back to Mount Adams, and you get, when we come out of that lunch counter where we sleep, and then you
Yep.
have that brutal slope, right?
Yep.
40 to 50 degrees, and you spend 5 hours climbing it, and then you get to that false summit. That breaks my heart every time.
Yep. Yep. We're here. We're here. We're not here. We're
We're not
here.
here.
We're not
Yeah,
here. And then
yeah.
you see the real summit across the crater and you're like, oh, great.
Uh,
I remember, yeah, when my daughter went Indigo and I and
mhm,
with you were climbing
mhm.
that and I warned her, we're
Yeah,
gonna get to this fall summit.
yeah,
Just be ready. And she got even though I warned her, she got
yeah,
there. I mean, I shared with her my
yeah.
experience,
Right.
and she was still a little disappointed,
Yeah.
but we all made it to the top.
Well, and let's shout out to your daughter who was 14 at the time. I
Yes,
mean,
she was.
and I was 40, and I thought it was, heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we had experiences like that before, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh man, here we go again.
And we climbed the mountain before. Anyway, a little leadership aside, but it's so true. Like, even when you can tell your team of the pitfalls ahead, you still have to lead them through those moments of, this is really hard, but I know we can do it. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen you do really well is empower people. And whether it's a technical team or a climbing team or family helping you with a project, you just have ability to say, this is what we're going to do. And maybe and you're going to have to tell us more about how you do that, because maybe it is part of that sharing with yourself, coming back to your why, but you have to do it even in those hard moments where you're like, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes out of, well, it's two things for me. One, having a vision of the final goal that I know where we need to go, and
Mhm.
I have a sense of what that looks like. The second thing is that it's also a lot of wisdom. Wisdom comes somewhat with age, but it's not only just with age. It's having been down a road before. Like
Mhm.
you can be young in your professional experience or your family life, whatever it may be, but if you have experienced something before, you have built wisdom around what that looks like. And so combining those two things, being able to envision where what the end goal is, and having the wisdom of some navigating some of the pitfalls of getting there, then allows you to say to the team, and I've seen this many times when I was working on negotiations with my team with other companies and things like that, where the team would say, "We're not. This contract isn't going to work. We're not going to be able to. We're never going to figure this out." And I'd say, "Wait. The answer is yes. We are going to get a contract. We're going to come into an agreement. We're going to figure it out. I know that's where we're going. Now, let's talk about how we get there. Is it time? Is it money? Is it functionality of what they're asking
Right.
for? How do we negotiate and navigate our way to that endpoint?" And it's really just the same as climbing, that you're going to get to the summit. You're going to get there. You know you're going to get there. How are you going to get there? And how often do you stop? When do you need to really push through?
Mhm.
When do you need to take a rest break? And where do you go? And even if you haven't been someplace before, you can kind of navigate on a mountain. That looks like crevasse territory, or that looks like that head wall
Mhm.
is going to be too bad. We need to go around here. You can navigate your way with the wisdom and experience you have from before. And one thing that I did find early on in life, especially raising my kids, looking to other people for their experiences. Observe people that you believe are successful. So even if you haven't navigated the road before, if you've never been a parent before, look out in your life and look to the people who you think have been good parents. How
Mhm.
did they do it? How did they navigate that road? How did they work their way to that goal of raising a child in such a great environment and in such a great way? And you can do that in business, you can do it in your hobbies. So you don't just have to live through the experience, you can actually absorb it from other people's experiences.
What I love about that is that you have to know that you don't have all the answers in order to seek
Yes.
them, right? You
Yes.
have to know that you're not right, or you're not the smartest person, or you haven't done it the most in order to, you have to maintain that humility if you're going to learn from others as they,
Yeah, I
right.
completely agree.
Hmm.
Humility is so important. And like I said earlier, it's so liberating.
Hmm.
Being able to walk into a situation and think to yourself and express to people, I'm actually not sure. I know
Yeah.
where we're going to go, and I'm 100% certain about the goal and how I think we're going to get there.
Hmm.
But you may have a better idea,
Hmm.
and I'm going to let that inform. Well, and inform how I think about it. That brings to mind flexibility, right? Humility and flexibility. You have to be willing to change direction
Right.
with other people's input. If you keep going in the same direction with um, ignoring the signs and the input and the sharing that other people have given to you,
Hmm.
you're going to be in a lot of
Right.
trouble.
Right. Right. I think I'm thinking about this podcast, and knew I wanted to have you on. You're one of the
Thank
sources
you.
of wisdom in my life, and one of the examples that I look to. You have such great experience, but so I knew I wanted to have this. I knew what prompts I wanted to have, but when I asked you, you didn't really push back, but you iterated on what are the goals here, and what is we cycled on the goals and the prompts because of that. I mean, that, and it was so empowering. It
Mm,
adjusted not only my thinking for this podcast but also how I approached the other ones.
mm.
um how do you think leading empowers others?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think that a good leader, that's probably that's what it's all about,
Yeah.
empowering others. And it takes all kinds of form. I think in my experience, if you lead effectively, you are then giving freedom, giving empowerment is the word, I guess, giving freedom to people to explore and attain their goals in a way that they think is successful. To be a good leader, you have to do that and then also let them know if they fail, that's fine. That's
Hmm.
awesome. You
Hmm.
learn something from your
Right.
failure. Even if you're in a company and you're a mid-level manager or a senior manager and you have a manager above you, if you empower your team to do something, you need to let them know that you will be clear to management if it fails. It was your fault as the manager, and
Hmm.
you take the blame and you take the learning.
Right.
You can't just throw your team under the bus. You
Right.
have to empower them to work their way through it and be successful. And also, if you're giving them that freedom, then you need to take ownership for having passed that freedom along.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Right.
and and you've got to share that with your team and be very clear about it.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, there two things strike me about that, which is you need other people to share with you what their goals and where they are. So you have to have created that environment in the first place. The second thing is, and I'm thinking because you mentioned Mount Baker at the very beginning, and I kind of laughed about it because that was one mountain that I didn't summit that you did, and I didn't feel well, and I needed to be able to say that so that I wasn't weighing the team down. I mean, and if you can't accept that you can fail, if you can't create an environment where people go, man, I don't feel like this isn't my day for this summit, I'm going to stay behind at our base camp, which is what I did, then you're dragging people along on your team that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and that takes that's something you have to do not only as a member of a team,
Hmm.
you've got to do that as a leader.
Yeah.
And sharing, being open and honest and transparent about where you are
Hmm.
uh, with the situation is so important and critical to success.
Hmm.
Because if you're not going to make it to the top, you better be clear about that.
Right.
and you're not going to pull the rest of the team down.
Mm.
But that puts you in a place of vulnerability. Nobody wants to fail,
Right.
but you have to look at it. And this is the way I looked at it is it's not failure. It's the same in business or climbing. You're on a journey. You're going to get there. If you don't get there, you're going to
Mhm.
learn from it. That in
Right.
and of itself is a success.
Yeah.
If you take it to the next experience and understand, oh, I have to climatize differently, or I have to
Right.
take different proteins with me and carbohydrates, and I've got to get fueled and et cetera, or we negotiate with this partner or this customer in a different way. We didn't get to yes that time. We're going to get to
Mhm.
yes next time. And sharing that with people who are new to the experience is so, so important.
You know what I love? I think I would say my young fallacy was that as I got older, I would be less vulnerable. Like that, and I think there's a Madeline L'Engle quote that we think that being an adult means to not be vulnerable anymore. And of course, what you're sharing here is sort of the inverse of that. We actually step up by being vulnerable over and over and over again until we can be those leaders that share transparently and with vulnerability and know what our goals and values are.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way before. It's interesting. Although now that is what I think. I just
Yeah.
hadn't put the words to it. That as you mature, and whether it's with time or just with experience and with things
Mm.
you go through, vulnerability, you become more vulnerable. But that also, as I've said several times, is very liberating. Being able to say, hey, this happened.
Mhm.
This was my experience. I didn't succeed. And sit with that and
Yeah.
have people observe that and internalize it. That's a very vulnerable and yet very liberating place to
Mhm.
be. The
Mhm.
more you want to hide it, the more you want to try to build your success in private, in secret, and not share, not have an open window of transparency, the harder it gets. It just gets harder and harder. The more that you try to navigate your way to success with knowing that you've failed along the way. You made mistakes. You got to share that.
Right.
Otherwise, it just festers and becomes a big weight, a big chain and ball and
Yeah.
chain around your leg that drags you
Right.
down.
Right. I'm going to bring this back to mountain climbing because you are so good at making sure that you don't carry extra weight because it
Very
will
true.
drag you down. I mean, you will not reach your summit of professionally, personally,
Yeah,
if you're carrying too much weight.
that's right. Yeah.
Those big summits, at least.
Got to strip everything down. Do not carry baggage. What's our goal?
Yeah,
What do we need to get there successfully, safely, and negotiate our way back down?
exactly.
But I'm not going to carry an extra. I'm going to cut the tags out of my clothes and I'm going to strip down everything.
Right. Do you remember the time we climbed? I think we were on Rainier, and you took out your jacket for the night or something and realized that you'd carried along a cigar in a cigar case, and you were like, I can't believe I carried
I was
this.
actually thinking about that when you mentioned the way to the top. Yeah, we got to the summit and then I was coming back down and I was looked in my pocket and it was a jacket that I'd worn for cigar smoking a week
Yeah,
before. And
right.
I was like, I can't believe I just carried this cigar in this cigar case to the top of
To
Mount
the top
Rainier.
of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Doug, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Wynne. It's been a pleasure for
Being on
asking
your
me.
team, and it's so great to hear all these lessons, and you're just you're a great wayfinder and leader. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. Nice being on your team too.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Campora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, avitiva.com.